Anyways, all right. So, you know what? I can't be fucked with an intro. Let's just talk about it. Let's just get into it. Mr. Panos Anagnostou,
Yes, sir.
Co-host of... I feel like I can't do you justice if we just start talking like that because I sort of need to give you an intro.
You can give me an intro if you
Nah,
like.
the intro's done. It's already started.
Well, here we are.
That's it. How you going?
Very, very good, brother. So good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. When was the last time we saw each other?
At least 2 years ago.
Fuck, it's been a long time.
Maybe even 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Too long.
maybe 4 years.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe 3.5.
Nah, I think Leonardo was around about 2.
You got, he was a little baby. You guys
Because we went to Blue Mountains.
Yeah, it was Glenbrook that you came
That's right.
to for a little while. Ah, that's nice. It's been a long time.
Long time.
Why has it been so long? Where you been?
Well, you moved very far away from where you used to live, so
Yeah.
that contributes to it. But
Yeah.
look, man, time flies.
You live near the water.
I do.
You know how long it takes me to get there now? An hour and a half. It's a
Yeah.
long time to drive to get to the water, man.
Yeah, but the mountains are beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very cold, but the air you can't compare the air anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like over there,
I
it's
can imagine.
fucking phenomenal. In the mornings, you go out, you're like, it's just so cold, you know.
Yeah, true.
You can hear roosters in the morning too.
Okay.
But then what they do is like they go and the rooster disappears for a little while. So they either put it in the oven, becomes a roast, or because someone's complained about. I swear to God, like where's the rooster? What? It's awesome to hear roosters. Do you like hearing roosters?
Well, I think you're not allowed to have roosters in the city.
Well, fucking that's
right?
that's a bullshit.
And
That's a
so
bullshit rule.
I hear the crows in the morning, and that's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit annoying.
Well, you come to the mountains, you hear a rooster for a couple of days, and then some idiot will complain because it's interrupting their sleep.
Sure.
You know, the rooster is, saying hello to the sun. It's preparing itself for the day. Trying to get all philosophical and spiritual here, but it's saying good morning. And these guys are like, no, I can't deal with that. I want to sleep some more.
It would be nice to wake up when the sun wakes up, right?
Yeah, with the rooster. Rooster wakes up with the sun. It wakes up a bit.
But it would be nice if we went to sleep and the sun went down.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah, I know.
we have bad habits. Well, I have bad habits. I get to sleep too late.
What time do you go to sleep?
Like a midnight.
Oh, fuck. Why?
1. I'm busy, man. I'm busy, trying to be a dog trainer. I've got to be a father.
What dogs are you training at midnight?
We'll see during the day all the way until, I'm normally finishing at around 6:37, 7:30. So I get home, do a little bit of family stuff, of course. Then you got to I look after myself. So I want to go to the gym, stay active, do my admin work. So I can't do admin while I'm hands on the tools. So, of course, running a business isn't just about doing the actual work, but of course it's all the background stuff. So, stressed out with that, working away, looking after myself. And then I get home, I got to have some dinner. Got to walk my dogs. I walked my dogs last night, like 11 o'clock. I'm not saying that happens every night.
Your dogs for? Aren't they with you on the road?
One dog's with me. I have another 2 dogs. I've got 3 dogs at home. So, I've got to honor them and get them out. And sometimes it's later, sometimes a bit earlier. And then after all that's done, I want to sit down and watch a little bit of TV.
Of course.
Maybe go on the roller, stretch out a little bit.
Oh, my God. You don't stop. You never did stop. I remember that. You're always active. What are you watching on TV at the moment?
Well, look, usually if that
Days
TV...
of Our Lives?
No, sir. If the TV's on and I want to be mindless, just maybe a sitcom. Everybody Loves Raymond's the recent one.
They don't get any better than that, man.
Seinfeld,
Yeah, Seinfeld's good.
I'm actually watching Shogun on Netflix.
Shogun, I heard, is a really good one.
Yeah, it's been pretty intense.
I haven't watched that on Netflix. I got to write that down.
Write that down. And The Boys just came out, so the new season of The Boys, like the corrupt superheroes. That's pretty cool.
The Boys, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy duty. So, but that's a little bit tough to watch late at night because you get pretty adrenalized and then it's hard to.
Did you ever watch The Sopranos?
I didn't.
Yeah, you should watch Sopranos.
Yeah? Okay.
I'm going to watch it again because I sort of want to model my business life and how I am in business per The Sopranos.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to accept my terms. No, you can't do.
I think the mindset can be something that's.
It is.
That's
I
useful.
agree.
Like not to be confident, to be straight down the line, to know what you want, to have a family or a collective around you that's working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
So for sure, but maybe leave the crime out so you can be in the longevity of it all.
Yeah. Okay. No crime. The federal police might be listening to this. You never know.
Well, it depends which gang you want to be a part of.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'll be a part of the Stodgify Mafia. Anyways, mate, welcome to my show. So this is, what episode is this? There's so many we can't even keep count anymore. 14. Maybe?
Nice.
14. Yeah, I think it's episode 14. But that's nothing in comparison to your 217 episodes of the life with your dog podcast. So,
Yes, sir.
mate, how's that going for you? And why did you start that podcast for?
5 years ago, I started, or just after my son was born. So, approaching 5 years around about August. And at that time, I'd been on maybe 3 different podcasts as a guest throughout that year. And I thought, as a podcast listener, I'm into it. I feel like I have something worth sharing and to inspire and to educate. So I thought it was a great opportunity at the time to start. Now, there's a few reasons. And now looking back on it, so maybe not the reasons why I initially started, but looking back on it, the benefits of having a podcast is you get to categorize your thoughts, have one topic to be something that you want to discuss for an hour. If I have a guest on, then it's different, unless I have specific questions that I wanted to ask or there's a topic that we want to discuss. But a lot of the times it's quite organic, get to know each other. We're networking and, you're putting yourself out there, which means you have to hold yourself accountable. Every word that comes out your mouth, we don't really edit our podcast at all, unless it's like something that needs to be stopped, or someone going to the bathroom or something. But we don't take ums and ahs out. We try to keep it organic, whether that's annoying to the audience or not. However, I like to put myself in a position where I want people to have access to some of the knowledge, because there's so much conflicting information out there in our industry, and I guess we can go into a bit of detail about that, but there's so many different philosophies and methods of training that I thought, I'm a balanced trainer, and as a balanced trainer, we use all the different methods that are going to be appropriate and find results. And what I mean by that, to be technical for a moment, is in operant conditioning, there's positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. And what that means is there's 4 different ways in which you can reinforce, 2 different ways you can reinforce and 2 different ways you can punish a dog's behavior. So to be technical, I use all 4 quadrants of operant conditioning, which makes me a balanced trainer, where there's some trainers out there that are positive only. They'll only use positive reinforcement and they will only use negative punishment to ignore behaviors. They believe putting any force or pressure or using punishment using punishment in terms of a correction on the leash, for example, a pop on the lead, is against their philosophy. So starting from there, as a very general kind of distinction, there's a massive rift within our industry. Now, of course, if positive only training worked, I'd probably be a positive only trainer. But the truth is you need to create boundaries and rules and follow through with correcting certain unwanted behaviors so we can overall get the results that we're looking for. So to put myself out there for an hour on average every week, and then having my co-host to kind of uncover all of these topics, I think it gives people the opportunity to know what's true and or maybe not what's true, but a different perspective or a perspective. And then from there, they can decide whether they want to train with me or someone similar to me. It also helps with potential clients that I'm going to meet up with. They have questions. So I'm at a party, for example, and you're a dog trainer. Oh, my dog digs. I'm like, you should listen to episode 6 because that talks about digging. Or you should, what made you get into dog training? Listen to episode 1 of the podcast. It's not like it's a way to dismiss the conversation. I'm at a party. I necessarily don't want to start talking about your dog digging. It also gives them an opportunity if you're serious, because again, if I'm at a party, I go into all this effort about explaining something and they're like, oh, cool, good to know. And they do nothing about it. They just wasted my time and, puts me down. So at least the podcast gives a reference, and it also put me in a position where I get to speak to heaps of other trainers all around the world and network, so I can open my mind, and I've learned so much throughout the podcast where I can implement new techniques, or if I'm got a seminar coming up with a certain trainer that's coming to Australia, then I'd like to interview him, kind of help give a shout out to the trainer and, maybe help with their seminar, but also get to know him a little bit better so that when me and other people that have listened to the podcast, then we get more out of that seminar, for example. So those things happen to be some motivations later. I didn't realize that was what I was going to get out of it. What I originally wanted to do was once a month we do a topic and we just put it out there, where my co-host Luke, he's like, no, the algorithm likes once a week. So since then we've just been pumping once a week, right?
Once a week, yes.
But that's a few reasons, and also it's nice to be able to share for free, so that people and dogs essentially are benefiting.
They also feel more comfortable after they've seen you talking about it on a podcast, and they feel you're more approachable. And then they feel like they can relate to you as well when they come and meet you. So it's a good marketing thing. It's a good marketing thing as well. It's good for people to get to know you without actually booking in and seeing you. Because when I booked in with you the first time, I didn't even know who the fuck you were and whatever. And then I had to meet you on the fly there, and we'll get into that. But one thing is, do you cop any criticism with your techniques and what you discuss on there? Do you cop any backlash or anything, like people saying, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing this, or, oh, I don't like that, or you don't know what you're talking about? Do you ever get into that stuff?
I'm sure there are certain people that are listening and kicking their dashboard and don't like what I'm saying. Do I get that feedback directly? Not necessarily. I do always ask people, is there any feedback, things that come, and it may be like, when you said this didn't make sense or whatever, but there hasn't been major backlash. I get some comments on videos on Instagram and things like that, but it's nothing. Look, first of all, podcast doesn't have an opportunity. We don't have our podcast on YouTube, so it's just all on the traditional sort of podcast app. So there's no way to leave comments and things like that. Yeah. I would like to move our podcast onto YouTube just to kind of get more reach, and then I guess you'd see more comments and things like that. If there were comments, if there was 100 comments, would I necessarily read them all? Probably not. I think that
you don't have enough time, bro.
Well, maybe, but also I don't have mental space for that, and then I doubt myself for people that are leaving comments. If you're leaving a comment and to say some hateful shit and not have much context about it and not actually willing to have a conversation about it, then why do I want to listen to your opinion anyway?
Yeah, fair enough. It's comical as well.
But also, if anyone has anything that they have beef with me, I'll happily have them on the podcast. We can talk an hour about the topic and then actually get to the bottom of it. And I'm happy for people to change my mind. So
that's good. I've got a line of about 50 people on TikTok that I want to invite onto the podcast. I swear that'll probably be best, and they'll probably be fat, overweight, fucking old men. Anyways, maybe probably. How about other dog trainers? In your industry there, with how many dog trainers are there? Is it a massive industry out there? Do you guys all congregate together? Do you set pricing together? Do you fucking play Monopoly with each other? What's going on?
Good question. I'm in quite a good network and a good community of dog trainers. So I got qualified through the National Dog Trainers Federation, which is a Certificate 3 in dog behavior and training. Fuck. And the practical elements of that was at a location in Dural. So from there, I had the connection because I ended up working out there. So with the teacher, his name's Glenn. We're still close to this day, and he's got his own podcast. And he's been close to me. I've stayed relevant in it. We've stayed relevant in each other's lives. And he's basically a mentor to me. But he's created a good network of keeping those trainers together so that we network within Facebook groups and things like that. But also, we go to many seminars together. So I know a lot of trainers because we keep seeing each other at the same seminars. And because we have such a wide kind of community, basically worldwide, and get different trainers coming from in the world. And every year I try to get to 2 or 3 of them, which means I get to see all the same trainers that are, wanting to learn and to progress their training. I probably wouldn't see, obviously, so we're all basically balanced trainers in a general sense. I don't like to label I'm a balanced trainer, this is a force-free trainer. But to answer your question, I'm not hanging out with the force-free trainers. That probably couldn't stand me, and I wouldn't be able to stand them. So there is quite a tight network, and we gather together in forums. And if we were to hang out together, I think it would be nice if we had a more physical location where we can meet and train dogs together and keep ideas flowing, especially now where we think we're connected through social media, but maybe we're not hanging out more in person. And then, of course, those branches go off because there's different subcategories within dog training. There's different sports and different disciplines that people like to pursue with their dogs. So then we branch off. But no, we have a pretty solid network. I have quite a few people that I could call if I had an issue with a dog and I wasn't sure how to approach it. Like to get another opinion about a situation, or if I need to send a dog to a board and train somewhere where the dog may need to stay for a couple of weeks and learn some hard life skills, then it's nice to have a solid network so you know where to send the dogs, not just any other ordinary boarding kennel, which can be pretty stressful for some dogs.
Yeah, they can be pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Was a good friend of mine, a colleague of mine, left his German Shepherd with me last year over Christmas. And he asked me, because I've got a big property up in the mountains, and he goes, last time that he took his dog to a kennel, when he went and picked him up, the dog was upset, didn't want to talk to him for a couple of, not talk to him, the dog's not talking to you, but didn't really want to participate much with him, and was just like in his own space like that. That's, I guess, common behavior or something. Have you ever heard?
Well, like, it could have been...
Your dogs can be upset with you, yeah, and they just don't want to fucking just like, like, does this happen? Like the dog goes, I'm upset with you now, like I'm not going to talk to you, and just turn its back and just like ignore you.
Try not to be anthropomorphic, so like to put too much human emotion onto something that's not human. So if that was a child and he came back as like, you sent me to that place, I'm upset with you, and they're thinking outside of the present moment, is the dog being... like showing signs of fear and stress in that moment? It could be, well, first of all, it takes 3 days for cortisol for humans and dogs for it to leave their body. So that stress hormone is there. And if he's had a dodgy experience where people have been heavy-handed, and depends on how long the dog was at the kennels for. If it was there for 3 days, that's not enough time for a dog to
It was
adapt.
about a week.
And like, so it takes, in my opinion, about 4 days to a week for a dog to be like, okay, I'm here. And then ideally... 3 weeks would be a good amount of like boarding time for the dog to adapt within their new environment. So maybe within that short amount of time, dog's stressed, confused, and then how was the delivery of the dog? What happened? So like, there's so many different variables to say, why did that specific behavior manifest? What's their relationship like, and all that sort of stuff. So, but does the dog think, hey, I've got the shits with you because you sent me to that place? I don't know if they think that way, but I don't know because I can't ask them.
Because we put a lot of human emotions on the dogs as well.
Everything.
I do. Oh, of course,
we call the sun happy and the moon sad, or like we anthropomorphize so much of the world for us to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And if we can use it poetically or metaphorically to try to draw an analogy so that we can learn, it can help. But to be anthropomorphic does a disservice to anything that's not human.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And now moving back to that same German Shepherd, and I want to get into a bit of techniques and stuff. Not exactly techniques, but what happened was he's a fantastic dog, but he got onto me, and he was always trying to hump me. Mm-hmm. I'm a sexy man,
For sure.
And the thing is, I finally had to start, like, you move around, like, leave me alone, don't do this, and a dog just leaves you, but then it keeps on coming up, and then it keeps on coming up. Pun intended, pun not intended. So what I did was I actually snapped, and I turned around, I grabbed him by the collar, and I looked at him dead straight in the eyes and said, stop. And I growled at him, and then the dog just backed off, and sweet, okay, just started being happy, and never again did he, for the rest of the time that he was with us, did he actually attempt to do that again. His demeanor and everything was still fine, happy, playful dog. But he stopped doing that. So I want to come to is that sometimes can that be an appropriate way to, I guess, is that discipline for the dog? Can we be, I guess they're pack animals as well. Like they were wolves. So you have to show who's boss. Yeah.
A couple things there. First of all, like, is that discipline? For me, how I like to think of the word discipline is you adhere to a certain structure or ways of being.
Yeah.
So a discipline is more of a verb than it is an adjective.
Okay.
So but did you punish him? Yes, you did. And to be technical, punishment is something that's undesirable. And when I was saying before, negative and positive, so we don't say good and bad as negative and positive. I'm thinking of it mathematically. So positive punishment would be you added something that was undesirable that weakened the likelihood and frequency of the behavior in the future.
Okay.
Where if it was negative punishment, it means that you remove something that is undesirable to the dog, which will weaken the likelihood and the frequency of the behavior in the future. So it seems like in that moment, we'll say that it was a positive punishment event. It was something aversive that the dog experienced. And one thing about dogs is you've only got 1.6 seconds to make the connection between a behavior and its consequence. You've got 1.5 seconds to say that was something that was good or something that was bad. Good and bad, again, I don't like to think of it that way. Desirable or undesirable. He was humping you because he was over-aroused, he's excited, he gets attention for it, he's goofing around, he's like, this is awesome, I'm just going to dick around. pun intended. And then he jumps up, and then you go on, hey, I've had enough of this. I don't like it. So then, and what you did was you grabbed him by the collar. So grabbing the collar was something that was undesirable to him because you weren't now letting him get away. And then you leaned into him. You created an aversive situation. Would I do that specifically? Probably not. But I would do something similar. Now, was that appropriate? I would say it was, because there was no fallout. There was no conflict that affected your relationship. The dog didn't try to bite you. Yeah. There's some dogs you can grab him by the collar and do that, and he'll bite you in the face.
Yeah.
So he'll punish you for that behavior.
Yeah.
So it seems like it worked in that moment because it was effective, that it didn't happen again. It was a single event learning. The dog was like, that sucked. I'm just not going to do that again. I'm going to avoid that in the future. So I think it was the right thing to do. It was probably the most appropriate thing to do because you want to tell him, hey, you can't keep doing that. And then, of course, these behaviors can get worse and they can manifest into other behaviors. So you nip that in the butt by saying, hey, we don't do that here. Yeah. I would ideally have corrected the behavior maybe the first time you did it, maybe not let it go a few times, but you maybe like the first time, it was a thing. The second time, oh, what the hell? Third time, you're like, hey, actually, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
So was it appropriate? I think it was great, as long as it's true that he was happy to be around you and that he wasn't hiding from you for the rest of the time that he was at your house. And also it was clear enough for the dog, and it shows that, because if you said he did another 5 more times and then he eventually stopped, it'd be like, well, maybe the first time that you attempted wasn't successful.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it was successful. And now, was it because of like pack leaders and wolves? I think a lot of that's like old school sort of myths. Now, dogs did come from wolves. And as far as I know, wolves and dogs have a similar ancestor. So I don't know if we specifically took the wolf and then changed it. I think we changed the thing that a wolf was. But again, I could be wrong. And then also, it wasn't just wolves. It was all the different canids. So like there was jackals and there was coyotes and there's foxes. And I think we did a lot of things with lots of different animals. Again, I'm not fully well versed in the etymology of it, but what I know is that I like to see it as, just because there was a pack leader and there was an alpha wolf, that we have to be alpha. First of all, of course we're alpha, we're humans, number one. Number two is that a dog's in your care, so you're already a super alpha because you're controlling feeding times and housing and access to the world, and so like you control it all. So we're demigods to dogs. Actually, dogs come out the womb of their mum dog knowing more about human body language than they know about dog body language. They've got to learn dog body language, but they know certain body language of humans that is either threatening or inviting. Like if we have a puppy and has never seen a human before, and I went like that to it or like that, it probably would be scared. Where like a puppy runs up to another dog and the dog's showing teeth and growling, the puppy's like, this is awesome, until the dog strikes it, and then he's like, oh, what the hell just happened? Where
does that come from though?
Well, because we made them.
Yeah.
You know, and who knows, like we genetically modified them to be a certain thing. We made all the different breeds to do specific jobs, to have specific roles in our community, herd and hunt and pull sleds, and to, scent out certain things, and to point animals, and to grab the pigs, and to hunt the bears, and to protect the rats from the property. Like the list goes on. Every single breed had a specific job that it was supposed to do. And now we have dogs in our backyards and they have no purpose because we don't have all those instinctive and traditional jobs for them to fulfill. So then my job is to teach people, you need to give your dog a job. You need to give your dog purpose. You need to fulfill your dog biologically, mentally, and physically, so that they can not just be active through the day and get tired, but to be fulfilled so that they don't look for things. Like my dog's in the back of the car right now, the window's down, he can jump out if he wants to, but he's fulfilled in so many parts that he knows that being in the car in this context means rest time. But then when I bring him out and I'm in the park and I start giving him commands, now he's switched on. Now he's learning through my conditioning of training that commands means opportunity to play tug. So the tug and the ball is in my pocket, and I will give you that thing, but you do something for me. And that tallies and he's surrogating the one step prior to dogs being domestic pets, and he was a sheepdog. And I've done some sheep herding with him, so I know that he can herd sheep, and I'm learning the skill as well. And that's the most fulfilling. 15 minutes of that, and I've never seen him so tired in my life. So, and I didn't teach him anything. Straight away, the sheep were there. We unclipped the leash. We told him, go, and then he's like, boom, straight away running around them. I have to direct him and guide him and tell him what to do and to move the sheep from one side to the other. But I don't have sheep in my backyard to give him a job with. So I use the ball to fulfill some of that prey drive. So when you throw a ball for a dog, that ball is chasing a rabbit or a rat in its mind.
Yeah, okay.
You play tug, that dog's trying to dismember that animal. So when I tell my dog a command and his reward is fulfilling that prey drive, I don't just give him prey for free. I make him work for it. Because even further from before being herding dogs, they were hunting animals. So one dog would muster them up and the other one would come over here and they all do their thing and they kill the animals and they eat it. So we hacked certain characteristics that we liked and we through selective breeding, and I would love to know how they did it, like what it actually looked like. If I had a time machine, that's probably one of the things that I'd be interested in, many other things, but that would be one thing to see. How did you make the dog? How did you make the shepherd? How did you make the Jack Russell? Just those two we'll just go with. What was that look like? So back to your question before is, do you correct him because you're the boss wolf? I would say, no, you correct him because it's just an inappropriate behavior that's just shit and no one likes it. So just stop it. My way would be, like my way of teaching, if I was at your house to show you about this dog, I'd be like, all right, the German Shepherd's jumping and humping you and we can stop it. But if you're not giving him the fulfillment he needs, he'll just start, like, I don't know, biting your shoes maybe. And then you stop that. And then he starts destroying the couch. And then you stop that. And now you're just playing smack-a-mole, just putting fires out everywhere. What I would say is, okay, well, like, what's his routine like? What's his lifestyle like? How do you stimulate his brain?
Yeah.
How do you stimulate his body? How do you fuse those together? How does he know when he's playing and when he's working? Does he know when he's resting? Does he know when he's allowed to have free time? Or is just his life all about freedom? He just does dog things because he's just doing dog stuff to you. He's just goofing around, having fun. Was he trying to dominate you? Well, I would probably say no. It just sounds like he was excited and psyched and he's like, let's just do stuff. And maybe humping is a way to get attention. People are like, hey, stop it. What are you doing? And he's like, haha, I got your attention. Where we think, oh, the dog had a grand scheme. He came to dominate me. He dominated me, man, because he wanted all my things. And I'd be like, oh, like, I don't know. Now, can a dog come up to you and like grab you and hold you and show some form of dominance in that sort of context? Or the dog's goofing around, but he's a confident, dominant dog and you don't have much of a relationship with him. And then he comes to hump you and you're like, hey, get off me. And he's like, no one tells me what to do. And you're like, oh, now we've got dramas. So, but do we see really truly dominant dogs? In the working world, in the sporting world, you may see more of those serious real dogs, but most dogs that we see, we've bred that out of them so much that we don't generally see very dominant dogs, like truly dominant, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, man.
So I think to dominate him, like you didn't have to like bite his ear and hump him and get on top of him and do all this stuff.
Imagine
right?
that. That's fucked.
Now, if you did, and
I'll go to jail.
like that too, but also like it may work for the results, but also you can just put a leash on him and he jumps up to hump you and you just give him a leash correction, then tell him to go to his bed. Like I do that. And then that way there he's like, oh, we don't goof around here. Like, no, and you don't jump on me. The leash is going to be on you and I'm going to correct you. There's less of a fallout. So yeah, he may jump up and you may give him a pop on the leash. He may feel that. And he's like, hey, I don't like that. So I'm providing an undesirable consequence, but then I want to tell him what I want him to do. If I tell you to go to your bed, now it depends on where this is. On the long lead in the park, or is he in your living room or in the backyard? So every environment would call for a different, like if I had my dog here to bring him into the studio, I would, I'll tell him to lay down. He would just lay down there. But to be more specific, I'd probably put a towel down and say bed. And that means you stay there and you're not allowed to get up. You just stay there until I release you. So, and then before that, I'd make sure he's toileted and exercised and he's done all that. So he's fulfilled. And then I'd bring him in here. He's not looking for something, but most people aren't fulfilling their dogs. They just like take him for some little walk and they throw the ball 3 times. And then they bring him to their friend's house and the dog's jumping around, taking everything out. And the dog's like, oh, look at your dog. He's so dominant, because when I told him no, he bit me. He's like, no, man, the dog's just running free and just doing his own thing, right? So I think sometimes we put more onto it than what it is. And then we mystify it. Like, you got to eat before your dog eats, so you're the boss. I was like, man, I feed my dogs heaps. Most of the time I feed them before I feed myself, just because after I eat, I want to sit down for a bit and they'll be hungry. So I feed them. It's not like I have to eat first so that they know I own the food.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah.
Hey, can I ask you, and might be a fine line question, but what are your thoughts on dogs biting people? And do you think that if a dog bites someone, that means that they're a dangerous dog?
Interesting. So I'll answer that by the first thing I'll say is, I had a client ask me, is it bad for a dog to bite someone? And that was a question. And I thought, that's interesting. And I'll get to your in a sec. But good and bad, as I said before, is a kind of a slippery slope. Like, what's good or bad? Like, good or bad to who, right? So, and what I mean by that, for some people are like going, what the hell is he talking about? Well, like, if a dog's scared and you touch him to get him out of, like, I don't know, the dog's running free on the street, you want to do the right thing and grab him, put him in your car to take him to safety. You grab him by the collar and he bites you. You'd be like, what a shit dog. But from the dog's perspective, it's like, this guy came out of nowhere. I'm stressed, I'm freaking out, I'm sore, and he tried to grab me and like assault me, and I bit him, and ha. So good or bad? So now when I said to her, I'm like, well, if her dog, she had a Ridgeback, if her dog bit her son, or if her dog bit a random visitor coming over, we'd say that's a bad dog. But if the police dog doesn't bite the perp, he's a bad dog. So which dog and when is it bad or good to bite somebody? Well, it depends on the role of the dog. Or would you say, is it bad that, for me, I wouldn't tell my son, you will never, ever punch somebody, ever. You will never show aggression, ever. That would be like a massive disservice to say to anybody, especially to a young boy, in my opinion.
Okay.
I would say you have to learn to control your aggression and be able to be the most dangerous person in the room when it's appropriate. Because if you're walking down the street and someone assaults your mum and is brutally attacking her and you do nothing, then that's bad. But if you're walking down the street and someone gives you a weird look and then you run over to them and beat them, that's bad. So nobody loves a warrior when the enemies are at the gates, right? So so then is a dog now dangerous because he bites? Well, context matters, right?
Yes.
Just like, for example, when we were saying hi to Chili at the front, he jumped up, I told him to jump on the back of your ute, and then like you're like, hello, and you like put him in a headlock sort of thing, give him affection. He was like, whatever. He didn't find that a bad thing. If that was maybe if you were someone different, or if my dog was a little bit different and you did that and he bit you on the face, I'd be like, dude, why are you like putting him in a headlock for, right? So then does that make him dangerous? Like, is he running around trying to attack everybody? Or was it that he was defenseless, like he felt like he had to defend himself because he was cornered, and then we put him in a compromised position, and that he was scared. So I would say I wouldn't like my dog to bite you, even if you did put him in a headlock. But as you're doing, I'm like probably just like pat him normally, and you're like, yes, sweet, and then he just went off. So it was not eventful. Nothing happened. If I was walking down the street and two dogs, or a dog, we'll just talk about one dog, a dog just barges out of somebody's yard and then comes to attack my son, like, God help that dog, number one. And number two, yeah, that's dangerous. That's heaps dangerous. If my son ran up to a dog on his bed and the dog bit him, would I say the dog's dangerous? I'd be like, no, we should manage the dog better. I should manage my child better.
Okay. Interesting.
So I don't think there's a right and wrong. Like, I'll be open to say, yeah, I've punched somebody in the head a very long time ago, but it's happened. I can't call myself dangerous, though, just because I was in a fight when I was a teenager so many years ago. Does that mean that I wouldn't do it again if I had to defend myself? For sure. So where is danger in something that's like violence or something like, or an act of aggression? I think if you can control it, like, for example, a dog that bites, like a police dog. There's heaps of police dogs that I've been in the presence of, and they hang around me, I pat it and everything, and there's no dramas. But if he was sent onto a person to track him and then to bite him and hold him down so he can be put in cuffs, then the dog knows in context when to do that. If the dog's running around biting everybody, then there's a problem. So I think, and you can have a dog that would be seriously dangerous if you just let it run free on the street. But if you're managing her appropriately and you're doing all the right things, and he's muzzled when he's in close contact with other people, and you're fulfilling him and giving him a good life, and it just means that he can't roam around random people, but you and him have an awesome bond and you live life, then like, who cares then? So it depends. If a dog's at a shelter and he's biting everybody, and then where you rehome that dog without any behavior modification plan or anything, he just goes to a regular family and he bites the kids and bites the neighbors and runs out and attacks Betty down the street, then we've got a problem, right? So I think When we
I should have been laughing at that.
Well,
But this dog's just fucking going and just taking.
he's a maniac, this
He's
bloke.
just taking out the whole street. I don't know.
Maybe not on the
why.
same day. Maybe not on the same day.
I don't know why I find that so funny. Oh, fuck me.
You're visualizing the
Oh, God, I'm tearing up. That's not fun. Just fucking Betty just
poor
like...
Betty. She was just doing the weeding, man. And these dogs come out of nowhere and bit her on the...
Oh,
That
man.
happens, man.
Man, all right. Let's take it back a bit before. So, to anyone that's listening to this that doesn't know already, Panos is a dog trainer. So it's
Surprise.
It's pretty fucking self-explanatory now. Let's take it back. I want to get into how did you get into dog training? And then I also want to go back because you've got a very interesting outlook on life. You're very wise. And from what I know about you, there's a bit of a background story there. And we've participated in a lot of stuff together and done a lot of things together. But before we get into that, I just want to ask you, give me one of your favorite books. 'Cause I know you like to read. Or give me a couple of books that you like.
I'm a really bad reader, but I do listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yes.
And it's funny because people are like, what's your favorite dog training book? And I haven't even read one. Like not an actual book of dog training. I do.
Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Yeah, exactly. One of them, actually, the first audiobook, and I can see right behind you, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I thought that was actually really,
That's a good book.
that was like the first book that kind of got me into developing myself. You know, as I said, I was 21 years old. I don't know if I said on the podcast, I was 21 when I started the business. So, I was like young at everything, let alone business. And I had a client of mine who owned a bookshop, and he gave me the CDs when CDs were a thing. And I started listening, and I thought that really put me on the path of just understanding myself a little bit more. And of course, I can kind of go into the backstory of like what got me into dogs and life essentially. Another book that I enjoy, I like Zen and the Art of Archery. I found that really beneficial. One of the standout themes of the book is, and there's so much to it, but one of them is the act of letting go of your arrow, and the decision you make of letting go of the arrow must be a simultaneous act or experience.
Okay.
You don't think about letting go and let go, and you don't let go and then decide later. You decide and let go at the same time. And I think that's so much about like decision making, whether it's in martial arts or whether it's in, working with dogs or in just in general life when you have to make a decision on something. I think, and I do believe in synchronicity and serendipity and how everything connects at the right time in the right place. And sometimes you just can't argue with that. The head will try to screw you up, but we all know that the heart is like the center that sends the information to the head. Well, I say we all know. That's how I feel.
The three dentians, so your head, your heart, and your stomach, yeah?
Yeah, and you want to align them all together.
Yes.
So, and when they're aligned together, then you can make those decisions, and that, I guess, faith comes into it. And, I've got so many different books. I liked one of them from back in the day that I got into was John DeMartini, The Values Factor.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, and one thing that I remember from the book is, most people think that they're unsuccessful at a thing, but it's because they're not looking at the things that they're doing, what they actually are, and then to assess and judge themselves. For example, when DeMartini asked this lady, she's like, introduce yourself. Oh, I don't know, my name's Laura, and, I'm a single mum, and, I work finance and I like to run. And then he's like, oh, cool. And he's like, what's your issue? And he's like, oh, I just don't feel like successful and at what I'm doing, and it's putting me down and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, what is it that you don't feel successful at? I was like, my work, and I'm not like really moving up the ranks and blah, blah, blah. And they went through this whole thing, and he's like, but you identified as a single mum at the beginning of our conversation. That's how you introduce yourself. Her highest value from the whole conversation is that her highest value is being a mum, but she's judging herself on how good she is at work. But her truest value is being a mum. And if she actually looked at what she was doing, actually pragmatically doing in her life, she is successful because she is the thing that she identifies with, but then she's superimposing other people's values into herself and then judging herself on, I'm not successful. But if you truly know what the values are that you hold and you work towards them, then you can actually see if you're making growth or not. And I think that's, I think a lot of times people like, what the hell is success anyway? And it's individual to everybody. and you need to do some work on yourself to know what you value, so you can judge yourself. Are you in the right direction or not? So I think that book was pretty cool. And I guess there's quite a few. I have to go through like the audio.
No, we don't have enough time to go through all of them.
But I guess
calm down.
I'll go three of them for the listeners.
That's it. Yeah, all good. So in saying,
on a side note, sorry, but
Yeah.
I think in terms of if there's other dog trainers listening, is that I try to value what I do, because even though I'm training dogs on a regular basis, and I've done the courses and I continue to learn, I'm always like researching new research and trying to understand the craft and the science of dog training to the best of my ability. But I know my job is to coach and teach people, and my passion is I teach dogs to live in our society, but dogs teach us to live in the now. Like dogs are teaching us while we're trying to teach them. So then most people that lack or having issues with their dogs is because they're generally not stepping up to the plate of what is necessary for leadership and discipline and responsibility, and also like making wise choices, because some people get the wrong dog for the situation. Like I just don't understand how they came to that decision. If I was there to help them, they would have a different dog potentially. So so I like, how are dogs making us better, and how do I make myself better, and how do I communicate, and I'm passionate about that. So it flows through in terms of, if I'm going to come to your house to help you, we're not just talking about dog training. We're mainly talking about you as well as the dog, but secretly we're working on the person for them to be like, you think you were training me, and it's like, well, that's like the point. Well, but people thought I was actually training the dog. So
when I called you over, I realized like you're there to help. We went to the park and we're walking Jack on the lead because he didn't want to go on the lead. And all you fucking said to me was, you're so tense. You're so tense. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're like, you're so tense.
I'm not tense.
I'm not fucking tense, Panos. And then Jack's like, what the hell?
No, your mum was there too. She had Echo on her shoulder, and she's like, you're tense, Daniel.
Everyone's just
and I'm like, you need to stop telling him he's tense, because that's making him more. And then you made that comment. Continue, sorry.
But you're the one that was saying I was tense. So everyone's just fucking on my back here. And then we worked on me, and I started to loosen up and loosey-goosey, and then before you knew it, Jack actually started to walk normally and became a happy dog. And so ultimately dogs are a reflection of us, or our pets are a reflection of us. And it's quite interesting when you see their behavior, or you just look in your own life to say, well, how are you contributing to that? It's not like, oh, he's a problem dog. It's like, no, I feel that you look at the person and you can see some aspect of what's going on there with the animal, with the animal owner. It's you true. Know, I really believe that, because I even look at Jack now, and I call him, he's a little bitch. He's a little bitch. He whines and cries and all this type of stuff, and that's because we've babied him and he's showing things within our lives back.
But he wasn't
a
puppy when you got him, right?
He was 1 year old.
Yeah,
and
he had issues when you first got him.
And you said that he was retarded a couple of times as well.
I've changed my wording. I've been training. I think when I saw you, it was probably like 1.5 years, 2 years of me starting the business as well.
Yeah,
so,
it's all right. It's okay.
For sure, but I think
it worked. What you did worked.
Yeah, look, I think when like a couple of those comments, I think also we get the dog that we need, not the dog that we want.
Exactly.
Well, I guess we get the situations that we need.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. That's life.
Yeah,
I agree with you, and it's ever constantly changing, evolving, and it's healing as well. So when you look at it, Jack came to me in my time at that time to help me through a lot of stuff. And now, as he's getting older, he's 12, he's getting up there. So eventually when he goes, that's a big portion of your life. But you can look at what you were, where you were, and look where you got to.
Yeah.
And even now, sometimes I watch movies with dogs passing when I start crying like a little bitch as well.
No, not like a little bitch.
And I just look at him and he's just there. But anyways, he's a good boy. When you come up, you'll come and see him as well. Sure. Now, all right, let's take it a bit further. How did you get into dog training? And actually, how did you come to this point where you started to want to develop your mindset? You wanted to work on yourself and you wanted to understand being a human.
We'll just get heaps deeper. We'll go the full story.
Just fucking go, bro. That's why you're here. I didn't call you for nothing. I didn't call you for a couple of dog treats. Where's the dog treats, actually?
In the car. And the reason why I say go deep, because like there's two different storylines that kind of coincide at the same time, and depending on who I'm talking to, we get one side, may not be open to the other side, but
we're definitely open here. At Stodgify, we're completely open, bro. All right, let's go.
So I was 17 years old. I was maybe 3 weeks out from HSC starting and, you know, end of school and everything else. And I ended up getting jumped and stabbed. It was a whole situation, but it was pretty dodgy. When I got stabbed, I got like a single wound into the kidney. So it put me in hospital for about just over a week. I'd lost like something like 15 kilos. I just dodged surgery. It did hit my kidney, but, you know, someone was on my side and looked out for me.
Yeah, okay.
And it was pretty dodgy. Obviously, you know, having some teachers from school that you didn't even think cared about you come to see like you're okay. The school prayed for me. Like, and while I was at school, I had like not much respect for the whole schooling situation. I wasn't really an A-star student. Actually, in fact, the whole time while I was at school, I was convinced that I was stupid. That's just how it is, you know, never really passed anything. I'm just there to kind of get through it. And, you know, it was a pretty intense time, right? And I was filled with some trauma. Like, you know, post-traumatic stress was not even a thing that was even mentioned in the zeitgeist anywhere. Like, if it happened to me now, then I'd be like, I think I'm having post-traumatic stress situations. Like, for example, a nightmare of like pretty horrific shit, waking up into another nightmare, and it's like, whoa, after 3 nightmares deep, I wake up and I have to flip my mattress because I'm like in a pool of sweat. Not walking to the car at night, sun's down, I've left the thing in the car, but it's all good. Like, I just get in the morning, you know, or like, so like an intense fear of the dark. And there was one thing that like would linger for like ages, would be like making eye contact with men as I walk down the street. If a man would look at me, I'd just like look the other way, and I'm like, far out, man, it's like that obviously affected me, right? And so I basically finished school. I worked 7 days a week, 2 different jobs, try to save enough money, because I knew that I didn't go to schoolies, but my parents wanted to give me a Kentucky tour experience around Europe. So I saved up enough money. They paid for my trip. I went there. I did 45 days, 21 countries on a Kentucky tour. And this is really cool, because for the first time in my life, I got to like because I went to an all boys school basically my whole life, and to be on a bus with random people from all around the world.
Yeah.
There was 25 men, 25 women, so there was 50 of us all together. It was an even number. And most Kentuckys and like sort of those sort of experiences, like the really short ones, are really like crazy wild, you know, fuck fests, and, you know, and just, it's a real big party scene. But because we were with each other for over a month, or like almost 2 months, a month and a half, we became like a massive family, and it was like a really good, decent amount of people. And why I felt like that was such a powerful time is that, first of all, I'm away outside of all the things that connect me to what I think I am. So I'm in another side of the world with people from America and Canada and everyone else. So I got to like really experience what I was in relationship, only the experiences and relationships that I formed along that time.
Okay.
Rather than if I met you and you lived in Hurstville and you know me because of that person, you've already made a judgment of what I am.
Yeah.
What I'm wearing. Oh, this person's like this.
Yeah.
You know, and so where if you meet hi, I'm Panos. Okay, cool. Boom. Blank canvas. I know nothing about you. I don't even know what people wear and who they are associated with. You know what I mean? So I got to like know what I was in amongst that, and that was pretty cool. Anyway, and then while I was away, my parents were always like thinking about getting a dog. I never had a dog up until this moment. And there was a Kelpie available, and my parents were like, this is the Kelpie, this is a dog, blah, blah, blah. And they ended up getting the dog. I knew about it, but I was not thinking about it. So I spent another 2 more weeks in Cyprus, and then we came back, and there was this dog in the house. I rocked up home, and he just like jumped up on me and like stared into my eyes. And I'm staring at him going, shit, it felt like, and I've been around some dogs before, not heaps, but it felt like he was like staring into my soul. It was deep. Anyway, this dog like just radically changed so many things about my life. I was running him every day, stopped a lot of bad habits, and even like the mindset of the boys, like we were all like, maybe a little bit undesirables. And this dog just brought a bit of like soul to our little community. Anyway, dog was like, radically becoming like the focus of my life, basically. I was studying building at the time. Actually, no, not at that time. I was working at Randwick Racecourse, and I was just on the building diploma. Rocky got to about 1.5 years old, and then he was diagnosed with leukemia, and we had basically 2 weeks to say goodbye to him because he was like rapidly declining. We gave him these like chemotherapy drugs just to kind of keep him up for like a couple of weeks. I don't know if they're chemo drugs, but they said within like a day he will go. So that 2 weeks, I was probably, and I was on light duties at the time because I did a hernia in my groin. So all I did for 2 weeks was cry like a bitch. I was so gutted that this dog, like I was more upset that he was dying than when I had to pray for my life. Like I prayed for my life. I'm like, all right, God, I think I'm coming today, maybe. Like I think I got stabbed in the lung or something. And like I could die today. So fucking here we go. And there was like no emotion. It was just like acceptance. It was weird. But with the dog, it's like, no man, like that makes no sense. It's unfair. And anyway, so he was put down. I remember I had that day that he was put down. I had to go to work, because it was my last day before I had my surgery 2 days later for this hernia, and I had to rock up because like they relied on me. So I rock up like a mess, like my dog just died and I'm like cutting the grass. But it was pretty trippy because he used to play with this willy wagtail in the park, and this willy wagtail would not leave the park and stay within the boundary, and the dog would just chase him for ages. And it was like they were friends. It was weird. And I'm cutting the grass, and there was this willy wagtail on the fence. And he was looking at me, and I got the thing about me and you distance away. And birds, like I was in a mower, like the size of this table, bigger. Like engine running, and I go this closer, and it was looking at me, and I'm like,
that's rare for a willy wagtail.
For a willy wagtail,
yeah,
bro.
They'll go away straight away.
Totally.
Yep.
And he was just looking at me, and I'm like, bro, you Rocky or something? And this is before I had any like spiritualness. I was just like, or at least are you the bird that played? Like, what's happening is weird. And I was like, and anyway, if you look it up, like the Aboriginal symbolism for a willy wagtail is the people that have crossed over, and that there's like they're a messenger from the other world. Like that's part of their belief. I'm like, that's freaking cool, right? And anyway, so that happened, and 3 weeks before Rocky was even diagnosed with leukemia, with his sickness, leukemia, and my dad was taking a photo of the sunset. We live across the road from the bay. And my dad was just taking a photo of the sun. And the photo, and this is what came up.
Wow.
Maybe I'll send it to you so you can put it up on the notes if anyone who's watching they want to look at it. So Rocky's standing right in the middle of those rays.
Yeah.
As if, and like, anyway, so that happened. My parents put this on a canvas, gave it to me, and one day I was blind drunk. Rocky had already passed away, and I'm looking at this photo, and I was just explaining to my god brother how, hey man, like the dog almost came from the spiritual world to like wake me up in a way, to put me on some path, but he knew he wasn't going to be here for long because he was going back to source. He wasn't supposed to be here. Like he pushed some buttons. Like this is how I described it when I was 18. Like he pulled some strings to get here just to be like, hey, have you seen The Adjustment Bureau?
No.
The movie? Oh, it's cool. So it's like, there was fate, but he kind of pushed something. It was like, or maybe he was a messenger from God. Who knows? But it was like and if you look at this photo, again, like I'm into symbolism, is that, it's kind of hard to see. But if you look on the canvas, see how there's like some light, residual light coming where that darkness on the ground, that's the grass. If you look on the canvas, a full-size image, it's all black. And then he's like, shine some light on my darkness.
Interesting.
And that's how I believe Rocky kind of put me on a path. And basically a month later, went to the shelter. I found little Kelpie lab. His name was Ajax at the time, but he was my dog Ace. I adopted him on the spot. I thought he was awesome. So he became my new dog. And then one thing led to another. I was working at Randwick Racecourse at the time, and I was speaking to one of the guys. I'm like, man, I want to work with big cats. I just want to work with like animals. And my mate's like, that's so you. What the hell? What are you doing here? Building, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, it was like something. But I thought, how am I going to break this to parents? I want to work with animals. It's going to be a little bit interesting. And I'm like, anyway, so I was sitting at the dinner table one night, and I had and I did TAFE 1 day a week. It was like an 11-hour day to kind of get it all in. Otherwise, I'd have to do it 3 times a week and whatever. So it was a big day. I hated it, doing structures and learning maths. I'm like, oh my God, like this sucks, right? And my dad was like, hey, how was TAFE? And I'm like, oh, it was all right, whatever. And then he's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, man. And then he's like, and then something, it was just perfect. It was like is that like what you want to do? And I'm like, not really. And he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I pointed at the TV because it was like a zoo reality show on. And I'm like, I want to do that. And then my dad looked at it and he's like, just do it. And it was like the fucking Rocky music started playing in my head. It was like, oh, my dad gave me the go ahead. I could work with animals. It was almost like I could do whatever I wanted to do. I don't even, like, no one forced me to do building. I just thought, oh, I don't know. I'm kind of good with my hands. Maybe I can be a builder.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, like I had no real direction. And I'm like, mad. So I just quit TAFE and I quit my job and I volunteered at the shelter. Yep. Like, for nothing on me. I lived at home. I had no rent to pay, no bills to pay. So I'm like, man, I'll just give it a shot. I ended up working at the shelter, my local one. And I ended up getting a job for the Sunday jobs because someone got laid off or whatever. And then one thing led to another and I ended up working there for about 3 years. And I didn't have much access to cats and lions and tigers, and it's very hard to get into captive animals in Sydney. And then everyone just kept saying, like, wow, you have like this talent with the dogs. And I remember once this lady, it was like another like kind of intervention moment. I was walking down the street with Ace and she's like, man, your dog's so well behaved. You should be a dog trainer. And I'm like, what's a dog trainer? Like 100% naive. I'm just a kid, 19-year-old with a dog. And she says a dog trainer, and then you first think greyhound trainer. That's the only thing anyone thinks about, right? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But the way she said it was almost like the message came through. It's like, and it stuck within me. Anyway, and then I thought maybe I should kind of look into it potentially. And I don't know where the moment was to be like, I'm going to be a dog trainer. But I went to a couple of different talks and things to kind of see where am I going to head my direction at. I started working, doing some training at the Agility Center, and then Margaret down there, she was the one who said, hit up the National Dog Trainers Federation, and then that kind of got things going. And then when I started doing the course, I was like answering the questions to the best of the class's ability, because I was hands-on dogs for a year or two. And then I was able to put words and terminology and processes in from like those processes and put them into my actual experience. And I felt like I knew all those things without knowing the words. So obviously I was drawn to it, and I ended up getting offered a job at the boarding kennels there. So I drove to Dural every day for about 6 months. That was pretty intense for me. And I wanted to like work close to my mentor and close to like the community. But I thought, no, I'm going to go back to the shelter. I'm going to make business cards and I'm just going to start giving them out. And in amongst this time, so I'll kind of go on a tangent to like another timeline in terms of like what was happening outside of that, because it kind of all coincides, like how like the universe or how God or the creator, the great spirit, whoever you want to call it, how kind of like things just playing part. But I remember in around that time, so it was after Rocky had passed away, and I kept seeing 11:11. Like, I mean, wildly seeing 11:11 to a point where I'm like, the devil is possessing me, and I'm and that's it, I'm done. And one night I woke up, I was like in my room, it was 1:11. I'm like, screw this. So I typed it on Google. I'm like, always seeing the same time. And it's like the 11:11 phenomena. One third of the earth experience it. But I'm like, what is happening? It's weird. And I remember at the beginning of that year, it was 2011, I said, I'm not going to have a New Year's resolution. I'm going to label the year. So that year was a year of balance. I'm going to search for balance, because of course I was like a young boy becoming a man, going into society, but with some trauma. And I'm like, well, I thought I was tough. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, and then, and there was a lot going on. And then I started like, reading about like, reading the Bible a lot, and, like being connected with Jesus a lot. And then having this experience, I'm like, through a curveball, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, anyway, so I clicked in one of the top ranking Google thing at the time. And then the lady says, people that see 11:11 on a regular occurrence are in search of balance. And I'm like, what is that? It's trippy. Anyway, so then a couple of days later, I went to Embrace.
Oh yeah, Miranda.
Remember Miranda, the spiritual shop? And I'm like, look, like I'm here. And I'm like, I just keep seeing 11:11 and I don't know. And I thought psychics were like devil things. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of like, yeah. And she's like, well, I guess there's a spot. And I'm like, let me check my time. And it was 11:11. I'm like, just book the next one, bro. Like, what do you want me to say? This is like, it was out of my hands, right? Yeah. Anyway, so I don't remember. It was Rose. You remember Rosemary?
I remember Rosie, yeah.
Rosemary? No, Rosie was the boss, but Rosemary was one
no.
of the psychic readers. Anyway, so she
No.
was like a pivotal part of my life, and she kind of taught me a lot about like symbology of like dreams and lots of stuff, and I was really into that at the time. But anyway, so that kind of put me on this path of like, now it got to a point, and again, like this is quite woo-woo for all of you out there going, man, we're probably going to lose Panos, but it's fine. I'll bring it all back together because it's all pretty cool. But I was seeing 1111 so intensely where this is, and again, whether you believe this or not, me and my mates went to Surfers Paradise and we took a photo in front of our rental car. We all took a photo, and the number plate X1 was the only thing was left of the number plate from our legs. 11. I was working at Dalton House at the time, like a reception function hall, and I'm walking, and the guy, I just met this guy, he just started working that day. I'm on the phone to my mate, hands free, we're just like putting stuff away, and then he just goes like this. He turns around and he goes, "Magic number 11." And I'm like, and my mate on the phone's like, "Oofed, bro, what is that?" And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, "Oh, 11 glasses left, bro, and we're finished for the day." And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, it's weird.
Yeah.
Like, why out of all numbers, and the way he looks at me again, whether I'm some special chosen one or whatever, something was happening. I'm like, this is freaky, right?
We're gonna put you in a cross and sacrifice you.
I think so. So these things were happening. I was starting to open up. Like Rocky was like the beginning of not just like a career, but also like the way I see the world. So it was like they were coinciding at the same time. And while I was becoming a new me, I was also going out there and teaching people. I'm like, think about it now. I'm like, I was 21, I had the balls to like rock up to a person's house and go, "This is how you should train your dog." Like I just, like if I think about it now, it was kind of crazy. But my point here is that okay, so back to where I was at the shelter. I thought, I'm going to give my cards out. I'm going to become a dog trainer, and and I knew I had to leave the shelter. I couldn't, it was holding me back. It wasn't giving me enough opportunity to like actually like do one-on-ones, but I was scared. I don't want to leave a paying job to like go out there. This is crazy. So I thought, look, I'm going to change from part-time to casual, and then I can kind of like wean myself off. But we had dramas because we talked about the rift between training styles. So this is where it got to how toxic the environment is. I was working with a bunch of dogs that needed to be rehomed, and these dogs had behavioral issues, so let's help work on them. And a lot of the time we were being really successful, and it was actually working out well. There was one little tiny toy poodle. He was a black little poodle, and he had resource guarding. So you'd like take a toy from him, go near his food, he'd strike you, he'd bite you. And you can't rehome these sort of behaviors.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, we're going to fix it. Like, typically, like, now look, we were in a low kill shelter, but dogs had to be euthanized if like behavioral euthanasia was the only option. We can't rehome aggressive dogs. He's like 3 kilos, bro. Anyway, so I'm working with him, and like I had to correct him a couple of times. I was making so much headway, heaps of headway. The dog was coming along, bit of structure, more exercise, introducing him and socializing to more dogs. Like things were coming along. I had the Wednesday off. I rock up on Thursday. I'm like, "Where's Prince?" And they're like, "Well," and I'm like, "Well, what?" And I'm like, "He got rehomed." And they're like, or something. And he's like, no, like we put him down. I'm like, what would you put him down for? They're like, you see, you punishing him, like you giving that. I gave him the guy saw one correction. I was doing so many other like really important techniques, but he saw me correct the dog to be like, and that was actually the pivotal moment where the dog started to learn, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do this." I'm like, "No, man, you can't bite me for the toy. Like, what's wrong with you?" And he's like, "That doesn't look good." I'm like, "Oh, killing him looks good."
Fuck.
What do you mean? So anyway, so like now I'm becoming like my responsibilities were a leadership role, but I was not the manager, but I was acting like the manager, but I was just like a casual employee. So we had differences of opinions of how we should treat the dogs because of politically correct woke shit, because wokeism was just starting to become a thing. It's like, "Oh no, we're going," and then doing the right thing. And it may be uncomfortable. Like you grabbing that dog collar and getting into his face, like I'm sure it was an uncomfortable moment. It's like I wish I could just say stop it, and you stop it. But like got to a point where you had to correct the dog.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we had a lot of differences of opinions, like not arguing, but like it was awkward. And it was me versus everyone else. So I'm like, anyway, and then one day I rock up to work and they're like, "Oh, I'll let you know about next week's roster." And I'm like, what do you mean? Like I've been working for like 3 years, you're gonna let me know about next week. It's Thursday. And then, and he's like, "Well," and I'm like, "Oh, you're letting me go." And I'm like, "Oh." Then I got really angry, but I got so angry that I'm like, "No, actually I'm angry because I'm upset." And I got upset. Like I was like, "Oh, bro, I'm hurt, bro. Like I've invested so much, like all these dogs are mine, bro. Like they're ours. Like what the hell you mean?" Yeah. And then the boss comes out trying to give me a hug. I'm like, "Don't touch me." Like, ugh, gross, like disgusting, like you're such a weasel. Anyway, but it was perfect because the next day the phone started ringing like crazy. And I was like, it's like, it wasn't them, you idiot. It was the universe going, bro, you want to do these things and you're staying at the shelter, getting paid $12 an hour.
Yeah, I got you.
What do you mean? No, we have to kick you out. You were supposed to leave 3 months ago, you said, but you're
exactly
being a bitch.
what happens.
Right? So, but I saw that because of, again, that's why I brought up 11/11, all this stuff is that, no, I was changing the way that I saw. Things weren't happening to me, they were happening for me.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can utilize the world. So anyway, so basically that's when I started going full time at around no, actually I lie. I was still part time. I worked at different places, doggy daycares. I was getting more experience and things like that. And then 2012 was when I took the business full time, and it's been, and like what a wild journey since then, you know, because there's so many other things that have happened in my life. And, you know, I focused a lot of my 20s, even though I was entrepreneur and business owner, and, you know, I ended up getting married and having a kid before I was 30. I think the biggest time of my 20s was finding myself.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to go into all the other different experiences that we've had together, and they were pretty, you know, very important to me as well. And, you know, but helping people while helping myself kind of came hand in hand, and martial arts played a massive role into all of that. So there was a lot happening in my 20s where it was like I wanted to spend more of my time trying to know who I am or what I am, or basically if I almost die again, I want to know what's dying, because what I thought was dying before was just a lot of ego shit, and it wasn't actually genuine, like authentic self stuff. And there's a big shadow in between the authentic self and the persona and the ego. And that big shadow, I think like being stabbed and meeting the devil that night, because that's how I felt. There was a dark energy around, and actually talking about that, because what actually happened in the moment, like the ins and outs of it, isn't important. I guess what's important is that it was spiritual. And again, just to go kind of out there, is that a week, maybe like 5 days before the incident occurred, me and my family went to New Orleans years before that, and me and my sister got these wishing dolls, and these wishing dolls were amazing in like a weird way. You'd wish for something and rattle it, and I swear it would manifest.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark. But I was young, bro. I was like, you know, how old was I? 8 years old when I wished for things. But then we moved, things got put away, and then my mum was bringing all this stuff out, and there was this big vase. And one day I saw that there was the wishing doll in this big clear vase with a couple of corks in it. I'm like, oh, we've got to get rid of this devil shit. So I emptied it out. I remember it's clear. I emptied it. The corks even fell out. I got it. Went across the road, kerosene, burnt it. Boom, it's gone. 2 days later, I'm with my mate. We're about to eat, remember Easy Mac? The Easy Macaroni.
Yeah.
So we got Easy Mac, and I'm like, I nearly dropped the bowl. I'm looking at the vase, and this fucking doll is in there. I'm like,
fuck.
And I'm like, no. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, bro, I burnt it. But I did remember we bought 2. So I called my mum. I'm like, hey, Ma, did you put the doll? Like, I didn't want to tell her what happened. I'm like, did you put a doll on the thing like recently, like the last couple of days? She goes, no, 2 weeks ago, I put both of them in the vase. And I'm like, but I swear but I emptied it out. And it was it's clear. I emptied it out and I burnt it, Mum. It's gone. She goes, don't burn things, Baton. And I'm like, no. And then anyway, I'm like, well, it's all right because I'm going to burn this one too. We don't want this devil shit in our house. And then my mum's friend calls back, and she used to be into voodoo when she was young. And she was a bit weird, where all the goth shit. And she's like, Panos, you can't burn it. You have to go to a crossroads, and you got to bury it at the crossroads and cover it in salt to trap its spirit. And I'm like, she goes, if you burn it, it's going to reincarnate and come back at you. And I'm like, okay. And Jason's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, we're burning it. What do you mean? Wow. So we went across the road, lit it up. And then that was like maybe Wednesday. And then Saturday, me and Jason got attacked and I got ganked. And there was other people present. Yeah. So it just felt like...
That was when you got stabbed, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck.
So within days of it happening, it felt like the evil spirit reincarnated came back at me. But then if you want to look at it grand scheme, it's like there was this battle within me. But it was kind of necessary in a way, because the darkness holds the light and the light holds the darkness. And, you know, but you can only go through that. And then, you know, luckily for me, I had a good foundation. I lived a pretty ordinary upbringing. I didn't have anything dramatic happen to me. You know, obviously everyone got, you know, the worst thing that happens to you is the worst thing that happens to you. But like, I didn't have like any abuse or trauma or anything. I lived like an ordinary life. But like, you know, I had good foundation. I went to a disciplined, you know, private school for my for most of my high school. So I had a lot of foundation. As with experience and bad experiences, I felt like that was a bit of a recipe, and then it was up to me to put something behind that. And I think if I could spread a story or give it some inspiration or motivation, is that, you know, bad things can happen, but that's where the best shit can come out of it.
Of course, man.
You know?
100%.
Yeah.
How do you, so because you touched on martial arts and we've done martial arts together, you used to kick my ass in jiu-jitsu, but do you feel that you got into martial arts as well because of being attacked?
Yeah, I'd say so, but I didn't look for it. I remember I was across the road from my house in the park, and my mate that I went to school with, and I'm still good friends with him to this day, and we were mucking around the park, and then he's like, and like we were wrestling, I think, and he's like, oh, do you, and I'm like, he's like, you reckon you, I'm like, I reckon I can kick your ass easy with your martial arts shit. And he's like, okay. He's like, how about you just slap my face? I'm like, yeah, I can easily slap your face. And brother, I couldn't get him. And he'd be doing all the dirty techniques or everything. And I'm like, I need to come to this dojo that you speak of.
Yeah.
For two reasons. First of all, it was more like, I thought, like, I'd been in street fights before, and I don't even think Mikey had ever been in a street fight, or maybe an altercation, but nothing like the experience I had. And I'm like, I thought I could fight, and this guy's kicking my ass, and I'm like, I can't even touch his face. And I'm like, no, I need to come. I need to learn this shit. And I didn't feel like I wanted to learn it because it was like, I need to make sure I don't get stabbed again. But most certainly, like in the dojo we went to, we trained with weapons and like fake knives, 6-foot sticks. And when I say fake, they were wooden, so it still hurts. Swords and traditional martial arts, traditional Japanese martial arts. And I think there was a motivation for sure to be like, let's learn how to defend this vessel. But the main thing that I got from the dojo and from Sensei in particular was that he was a mentor. He was an authority figure. He taught us so much about life and situations, and in amongst the art, we were learning so many things about ourselves. And I think it was truly a place that was able to embrace some of the dark arts and use it for development, for mental, physical, emotional, spiritual development. It's everything that he taught, and without it, I don't think I would have, like, it was basically like it was my church. It was a place that twice a week, no matter what, we're there. And that discipline, and it was hard. It's heavy training. Like, we would leave borderline injured, definitely hurt.
Man, I used to have a lot of bruises.
Yeah.
I used to be fucking hurting after that, man. Just the bruises. I wouldn't be able to move my arms for days, all black and blue.
Yeah. And being in that, like, training like that now, like in our 30s, can be a little bit more rougher.
Oh.
I'm happy we did in our 20s, where I learned a lot. And look, and since then, like, so I trained at that dojo for about 9 years. And then I went off to like different other disciplines to find out just a little bit more about what they're to offer. Because when you're kind of enclosed within one way of training and thinking, you think you're a lot until you put it to the test. And I think learning MMA, learning jiu-jitsu, learning boxing in particular has really improved my game in terms of, like, if I was to think about self-defense, but also you get, like, it's addictive. Training is addictive. It feels so good. I love the challenge. I love the physical, mental pursuit of it. And also there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. And also you want to be confident to be able to defend yourself and your family. One
thing that I noticed was the amount of psychology in that, man. Yeah. Like the amount of, like, breaking down the layers and being rigid, and then going there and you can't be rigid. And then, like, stop being so rigid, like, stop being so tense. Like, fucking, how do you stop? And then you're just trying to work it out. But then after a while, it just starts to flow. And the key was just don't think about it. You think about it, but don't think about it.
Yeah.
So it was one of the best psychology sessions that I had was there.
Although, it's very zen, right? It was like, it's here, but it's not here.
Yeah.
It's like, think, but don't think. It's like, I want you to learn these techniques so much that you don't remember them. And it's like, don't remember them. And it's like, yeah, because it becomes action.
Yes.
Like, do you remember how to drive? You just drive. You don't, like, try to think about driving, because to remember means you have to think about it. No, it's a doing. It's not a thinking, and fighting on that level should be that open-minded, open loop, but also not so open loop where you're just going with, because you want to, because, another thing within the art is that, what if it's a drunk uncle throwing a swing at you? Are we taking him out, or are we just subduing him so that we can calm him down?
Yeah.
So you can't just go gun-ho and break arms. You may want to just subdue and then kind of gently put him down to the ground, because, like, you need to calm down, sir. So having that self-control and to know what you are in the face of an enemy, because you could defeat yourself before the attacker could defeat you before he even decides to attack you, just with his intention, you know. And how do you, and also like about martial arts is about not getting in fights. It's about learning that you can see danger coming and smell it out and then avoid it. You know, after I got attacked, I had to learn this later, is that I couldn't be in a restaurant with people walking behind me. I couldn't. I had to be with my back to the wall, seeing the exits. I just had to. And the boys knew that. Before I was like, you know, in a relationship, the boys were like, Panos, it's there. And it wasn't like I've learnt this thing that I know now I need to do. It's like, I can't sit there. Like, I just can't. Like, what the hell's going behind me? People behind me? No way. No, I got to sit there. I got to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then learning about, like, for example, how Sensei would offer some advice, and it was really eye-opening. I told him when I walked down the street, like, we were training for years, and I'm like, and when a guy looks at me, I just got to look away, like this anxiousness, this fear.
Yeah.
And he says, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm not going to start fighting everybody, like, because I feel threatened. And he's like, no, obviously. He says, what you need to do is, the next time you make eye contact with that person, with a person, instead of like looking away, smile and say hello. I'm like, okay. So I'd walk down the street, next opportunity, someone would look at me. Hi, how you going? Hey, good, mate, how you doing? I'm like, interesting. Then I thought, dude, I do this with dogs all the time. There's a process called counter conditioning. So if a dog reacts to a dog across the road, you say, look, like the dog looks at the dog, he's about to react. You get his attention on you, so you tell him to look. He looks at you. You say, yes, you give him food. So you give a mark. You tell the dog how I'm going to feed you. Look at the dog, and then look back at me, I'll feed you. Look at the dog, look at me, and I'll feed you. Over and over again. And then one day, the dog will look at the other dog, and as a conditioned response, instead of barking and lunging, he'll be like, hey, there's a dog there. And he's going to look at you, and you're going to mark it and give that food. The dog starts to realize the presence of dogs gets me this thing, and then we can start to change, we counter condition, we change the conditioning. And I'm like, and I'm counter conditioning myself, and the guy looks at me, I don't look away to make sure that, well, I didn't look at him, the thing went away, that's my survival mechanism. No. He looks at you, you say hello, he will say hello back, he's not a threat anymore. And I've done the calculation. It's like 1 out of 200 people will not gesture, or they'll just death stare you. Yeah. So then that means there's 1 out of 200 people that are a potential problem.
Yeah.
So then that just cracked all of that issue. And that wasn't about putting my hands up. It wasn't about ducking and rolling and running away. It was about just being a human. And just something like that, one thing from my mentor to teach me, which radically changed my life. Like, if I see someone kind of dodgy-ish standing there looking at me, hey, go on, man. Yeah, good, bro. How you doing? Yeah, good. Cool. Like, nothing happened. And then I could be like, hey, you going? It's like, fuck you. It's like, all right, cool. Then at least I know I have a problem.
I'll go fuck myself.
You see what I mean? Like, now I'm cool. Now I can make space. I can attack you. I can call the cops. I can make sure that the situation's okay, get my kid out of the way, tell my wife to blah, blah, blah. So, you know, you learn so much about yourself through martial arts. And that's why I find it so beneficial for an activity, especially for boys and men. But I don't think exclusive for them. I think females benefit tremendously as well. Yeah. But in terms of, we talk about biological fulfillment for dogs, I think there's a lot to be said for biological fulfillment for people when they learn how to use their body for what we were kind of intended to do, whether that's hunting or fighting or something physical. And I think that's why sports are so fulfilling for people, because instinctively, men generally were the hunters and women were generally the gatherers. I can't believe I said that in 2024. How dare I?
I'm going to get cancelled.
I'm going to get cancelled here. Far out YouTube. Sorry, guys. So we don't hunt anymore.
No.
We don't gather anymore. But men generally typically like to gather together and throw projectiles at targets while there's an opposing team wearing a different color trying to stop them.
Yeah.
That sounds like hunting and fighting in tribal warfare to me.
Of course.
And then also the other individuals will go through a big building and look for things and going, wow, hun, look how beautiful this is. We need to get it. Seems very much like, look at the berries. We found the berry bush. We need these things. So we're hunter-gatherers. We fulfill our hunting and gathering needs by sport and shopping. And they're both massive industries that make a lot of money.
Yep.
Hacking off our instincts, just like when you throw that ball for your dog's hunting. So fighting and learning how to control that beast into a manner where you become a gentleman because you're able to be dangerous under control, And it's like a Jordan Peterson thing. He's like, you should be able to be like, you should be how does he say it? I'll butcher it. He says, you need to be willing or able to be a monster.
Yes.
And control it.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're not able to show, or if you're not able to be dangerous, then you're actually weak.
Yes.
And you're not peaceful. Peaceful is somebody who's willing and able to fight and defend to create peace. Because if you know I'm dangerous and I know you're dangerous, then we can go, well, then you have some water and I have some water. But if you're weak and not willing to fight and I'm dangerous, now everyone that you're looking after can't be looked after because now I took the resource.
Yes.
So you should be able to, back to your point, a dog biting somebody, well, sometimes I'm like, bloody deserved it. You know, running up to a dog and putting a crayon up its ass, you should get bitten. You see what I mean?
Oh,
so
Betty shouldn't have done that.
yeah, well, Betty was just doing the weeds and minding her own business, right? But yeah, I think we went all over the shop there. But it's your job now to bring that back.
There's no bringing that back, man. You've taken it on thing. I'm actually quite disappointed they put down Prince.
Yeah, it was a shit go.
That's a little toy poodle like this. Just I'd fucking take him home like that. That's ridiculous. And I don't want to put one on such a high here for the podcast. I want to put it on a down. How many dogs they put down? I think that's ridiculous.
No, look. We had like such a low percentage. I think it was something under 5, maybe 3%.
Yeah.
And that's like, so we'll call 100 dogs and 3 of them are euthanized within the year. I would say that's 3 too many, maybe. There's some dogs I'm like, this dog cannot be rehomed and is a danger to society if we rehome this dog. And then we need to find the perfect home, the perfect property. Like, where do these perfect farms exist? So the reality is that some dogs, like, you can't save them all. Especially in a rescue and a shelter organization, there is no saving them all. It's just not going to happen.
Understood.
Right. But in that moment, it was more about, no, we're not willing to let Panos be right because it seems like he's messing up our virtue signaling.
That's fucked.
You know, and also Panos can't be right because we're right. And it's like, I don't know, man. I'm not trying to be right. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I don't want to be right, really. But like, I thought, and again, it's not like they didn't love dogs. Like, they love dogs probably more than me.
I know that animal shelter there, and I'm sure that they do and stuff. But that just seems like a bit of a shit go for a little toy poodle, you know? No, that's how I feel about that. But oh well. So in the grand scheme of things, because we're not doing Japanese martial arts anymore. So what have you moved on to?
Well, in the last couple of years, maybe the last year and a half, I've had a bit of a step back from martial arts for a couple of reasons. We've discussed before we were recording that I'm like super busy, so much going on. So to answer your question, I was doing and I went to different schools of BJJ just to get a feel. I think it's really cool sparring and rolling in, you don't spar, but rolling in jiu-jitsu because you can go full out. We're not punching and kicking each other, so we can train quite hard and the injuries are a lot less than if you're fighting with sticks and punches and strikes. So you can still get pretty injured at jiu-jitsu, of course, you know, like putting joints in locks and, you know, and manipulating your body, you know, obviously has its issues. But I was really enjoying that. I was doing a lot of pad work and boxing, and I was training a little bit of the MMA gym at my local UFC gym. So that was pretty fun. But the reason why I stopped was because, again, just not stopped, but had a break, is because 2 reasons. First of all, I was stressing more that I wasn't able to get to classes on time. Like if I'm finishing 7:30 and I got to prioritize making money than training, and I wish I didn't, but that's a reality of it. And that I was only going sometimes. So I'm like, sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not. I'm not really progressing the way that I want to. I'm not really making every session. I'm just spending money and not even getting to class. So I'm thinking, and then that, as well as my son, he's 5 years old. He's been training jiu-jitsu. I've been taking him to class. So I thought passing the baton on and kind of getting him to be, you know, to make that part of his foundation in life for confidence. It's not so he can be a badass fighter. I want him to learn to handle getting pushed around, learn how to put someone to the ground and get on top of them. Because again, he's doing jiu-jitsu, so he's not doing like striking arts at this stage. And I want him to be able to shake someone's hand, even if he lost, and bow and sit down when you've been told to sit down and listen to the coach, and and it's for the discipline and for the foundation more so than him learning not to get bullied. I'm sure a good byproduct of martial arts is like fighting, but for here it's more about his development. So I thought, I really want to get back. I've been doing a little bit of training, like training our traditional arts and a bit of other things with my friend Mikey still. So, even after all these years, we live close by and we train when we can. So, so that's pretty cool. And like just sharing new ideas and getting after it. But I would probably, I'm in a couple of different worlds about where I'd go, but I'd probably continue jiu-jitsu just because it's good for the longevity. We're not getting punched in the face and the head and head injuries and stuff. And it's just fun. It's really, really enjoyable. I love it.
Of course.
So I'll go back. It just has to be a good time. I don't want to try to put too much on my plate.
Give me, have a think about it, but give me probably one of the most, give me one of the toughest points of your life. Okay. And what advice would you give yourself now back to that point?
Interesting. The other day on another podcast, I was asked, it was a dog training podcast, if you can go back in time, and if you were to go back in time, what thing would you want to change or observe or do in that moment? And I thought, to answer that means that I would want to change something. And if I was to change, and I know you didn't ask that, but if I was to change something, then I'm not the thing that I am now. So if I'm not the thing that I am now, how do I know what I need improving on if I'm the thing that thinks that needs improving? Yeah. Which then means it's a bit of a paradox. They're on two different, multiverses and they're different. So, but what could I go back to give some advice or maybe look back on? That's a real tough one. There's a couple of different places. You'd probably think, go back to the point where you're about to get stabbed and not get stabbed. But then, even though that was like, I guess technically the worst thing that happened to me, it was almost like the best thing because it put me on a trajectory. And now who knows what would have happened without it. But I would probably, you want me to look back and give advice to myself? That was the question. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'd probably say, and maybe it was a similar kind of answer to when I gave Glenn that answer about going back, is that I'd probably want to surround myself with more of, say, I've kind of become like a lone wolf. I went out, I worked by myself, I did different things on my own. I when we went to, do, like sweat lodges and stuff, I was like on my own. Of course, we had our own community, but then I'd go off to different places. So I was like a very individual person in different places. Yeah. Rather than this is my clique, this is my group, this is all I sit around. And not that I didn't want to be closed-minded. That's one thing that I never wanted to be, like just be the good Greek boy that just stays within his community and nothing, and don't question anything, be naive. I'm like, no. That's just not what I am. But if I could do anything and give myself advice, is that when I had mentors around me, to be more observant that they are your mentors. Yeah. And that be more of a student for longer. Yeah. Don't think that you know so much. Know that you don't know anything. And the more you know, the more you're going to know less of. So, just stay humble. And I guess I was like that. And maybe someone did. Maybe Rocky was the advice that need to come back and to shift this. And maybe it did happen already. But I think I was pretty mindful. I wouldn't want to I don't know. I'd probably say I would just like to look back on it again so that if I've missed anything from this perspective. Yeah.
I think you're someone that you need to go through whatever it is that you go through so that you just bring it all together and then you bring that into yourself. Like you need those experiences. It's not like you sit in there having a hard time and come back saying, oh, this will soon pass. Like, nah, fuck that. I need to experience this. I'll be okay. Because you've seen what that fire and what it does. So I really appreciate that. And that's good. So there's no good answer to it or whatever. No. It's just whatever it is. And it just shows your psychology, which is you need to go through shit, Panos, because I think that you thrive on that, man. You thrive in those situations.
Well, there's something in alchemy called solvet gaugla. So to dissolve, to recoagulate.
Yeah.
So like on a chemical level, that would break down certain compounds and then put them together to become a new compound or to become a new thing, you know, break down the lead to become gold, or even more pragmatic of, I don't know the actual, like I have heard it, but I can't recite it, is that there's certain compounds that you can make other compounds into, so that it's all like the basis of science. But psychologically, it's that you break yourself down to a point of that you're not much, so that you bring it all back together. And that's kind of like what Vision Quest would be, right? Is that, you know, and I guess we could briefly talk about that because I think it's important, but, you know, being on a mountain for 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, on your own with a journal, and you're just sitting in nature going, what am I in relation to all things around me? And that you break yourself down to a point where you're like, I don't even know, like what, and the reason why I chose to go on that kind of rites of passage and to have that experience was that I wanted to know who am I in relation to me? Like if I was a math equation, I want to put me minus me equals what? All right? What is that left? Because that's the real shit. Everything else is bullshit, you know. And to say what you're saying, and I think it's important, is that there are, like, if you try to avoid an uncomfortable situation, you may not know what you are.
Yeah.
Just like and what we learn in ninjutsu, and the basis of most of ninjutsu is you attack when you get attacked. Like the point of, like, there was not very much, and maybe a fault of ninjutsu is that we didn't learn attacking. We learned defending. So like most of the attacks and most of the things that we were learning came from an attack. I'm going to come down on you. You're going to now do the number. It wasn't that we were... Of course, we attacked each other and we hurt each other and we did all that and we did do aggressive stuff. My point is that the point of a lot of ninjutsu is, as the thing's coming, you use it. It's coming to you, you use it. You're countering everything. And just like life throws something at you, how do you counter it? How do you use it? Can you bring it back and send it back with you? Do you like avoid it altogether, or do you let it hit you? You know, and like if you come for a ride, if I like slip and then get your back, it was your straight right that got me to get your back. If you didn't try to hit me, I couldn't get you back that quickly.
Understood.
So yeah, I think you need to kind of allow those situations to happen. And while it's happening, you don't know that's happening. It's only later you're going, oh, I used that for this. It's not like we're in the middle of it. You're like, why am I being cursed? Fuck my life. Right? But because it's hard to have that mindset going, oh, this is supposed to happen. This is supposed to happen.
Not many people have that mindset.
Yeah,
a lot of people have the mindset of, why is this happening?
Yeah, why me?
Yeah, exactly. So why me? Oh, poor me. I've been in that place, but now it's sort of like, nah, fuck it. Like, let's see where this goes and why this is happening, and it's okay. And the good thing about looking back is that you can actually see how you progress afterwards and how you got through things. So anyways, Panos, this was one of the greatest pleasures of having you onto my show. Where can people find you, buddy?
You can find me on Instagram, NP Dog Training. Nooch's Pooches is the business name. So if you type in NOOCHS and Pooches, I'm sure that'll come up on Google. Yeah. And as you mentioned before, Life with Your Dog podcast is our podcast. So if you own a dog, or if you want to learn more about dog behavior and training and all the other different topics about not just training, about living with your dog, hence why we call about Life with Your Dog. Yeah. And my website's npdogtraining.com, where you can find everything.
And do you service all Sydney or just one portion of Sydney, Australia-wide?
No, at this stage, I'm pretty much southern Sydney, eastern suburbs, and some of the inner west. Okay. I can venture off around, but I kind of keep it local. And if anyone's too far out of my service area, people can come to me. And maybe I'll give myself a shout out because I've got a book that I'm writing and it's going through the editing process, and that will probably be published in the next couple of months.
The fuck? I was going to say to you need to write a book, but what are you writing? What's this book about?
So this book is about basically dog training. It's a dog training manual. Okay. And it'll be like give you a step-by-step in many different situations about how to work obedience training and some behavior modification. Yeah, okay. But there's other books in the pipeline, but I'm going to get this one done first. So if you're into dog training, just keep updated on my socials, I guess, and you'll start hearing about that. But I can start whispering about it now because it's becoming a bit more real.
Definitely, and we'll put that up on there, and we'll plug that and we'll support that. So what other books, though? What type of books? The Life of Panos?
I don't want to give it all away and diffuse it. But look, I think maybe another one will be something about puppies. Just because this book currently isn't about specifically puppy raising, but I may put a little kind of manual out, and it won't be so heavy duty, but it'll be a bit more of a guideline.
God bless.
And there's other books that more about myself and about how dogs have taught me life and things. So one's about how do we teach dog stuff, and the other one has to be about, well, what have the dogs taught me, so that you can learn and maybe find the opportunity to be like, what is my dog teaching me, or what is every situation trying to make me become. So
if anyone loves philosophy, you got to fucking, that's going to be something fantastic to read, man.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot
The
of
chapters
fun.
have been written, but now I've got to like the chapter headings, but now I've got to elaborate. But one book at a time, I guess.
You know what? It's an honor to call you a friend.
Thank you, brother.
It's always good to see you and your family. They're not here today, but it's always a pleasure to see you. And God bless, and we'll organise to do this again, or
I'd love
just
to
hang out, man.
It's been a great time.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Much love, brother.
Coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, bro. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.